Hi, my name's Kira, and I used to believe that being the quiet one meant I was being respectful. Turns out, in my family, silence just made me invisible. They told people I walked away from the cabin, that I didn't care. But while they were throwing backyard barbecues and posing for newspaper photos, they were also filing paperwork behind my back to take everything. And when I finally said something, they called me ungrateful. But here's what they didn't expect. What happens when the quiet one finally speaks? They'd already parked their cars when I pulled into the gravel circle. Ruben's SUV stood in its usual spot near the porch. Corinne's minivan, too. No one had texted me a reminder or directions, though I didn't need either. I knew this cabin better than anyone. I stepped out of my car and grabbed the dish from the back seat. Chicken pot pie, still warm. My hands shook a little, but I told myself it was just the breeze picking up across the trees. The front door was half open. I could hear the murmur of voices, then laughter. Inside, the living room was lit with the soft yellow of Edison bulbs strung around the beams. The scent of baked ham and fresh rolls clung to the air, but not one person turned when I stepped in. I stood there for a moment, long enough to notice that the music had been switched off and replaced by someone's playlist. Country, something Ruben liked. I cleared my throat and offered a half smile. Hey. Nothing. Velma, my mother, brushed past me with a tray of glasses. You can put that in the kitchen, she said without looking. Then she turned back to Corinne and asked, Did Ruben ever tell you what he did to fix that water pump? Genius. I took the dish to the kitchen, set it down, uncovered it. No one asked what it was. No one thanked me. There were name cards on the dining table. Mine wasn't among them. That should have been the clue. I found a quiet corner near the fireplace where the heat was barely reaching. My father, Luther, was in the study. Door cracked open. I wasn't eavesdropping, not really. I was walking by when I heard my name. She's got no sense of tradition, he said. Frankly, we regret raising her. She's not what we hoped. It was the tone that got me, not the words. Like he wasn't angry, just resigned. My hand tightened around the back of a wooden chair. I waited. I wanted someone to disagree with him. A pause. Then another voice, deeper. Uncle Kent, maybe, answered. That's harsh, but you're not wrong. I left before I could hear more. I didn't slam the door, didn't drop the dish, didn't call them out. I just walked out of the house I'd helped pay taxes on, down the steps I'd rebuilt with Ruben, through the yard where I'd planted flowers Velma later claimed she hated the color of. I sat in my car, keys in hand, and stared at the dashboard. My breath didn't hitch. I didn't cry. I just cooled down. Later that evening, I checked Facebook. Corinne had posted a family picture with a caption, Fisk Family Reunion, 3 generations strong. I zoomed in. Everyone was there. Even Jenna, the cousin who moved to Florida. Everyone except me. It wasn't a mistake. I wasn't overlooked. I was erased. There's a kind of quiet that doesn't feel peaceful. It feels surgical. That night, I checked into the small motel off 93. I had packed a weekend bag, assuming I'd be welcome. I sat on the edge of the bed, dish still in my car, untouched. The TV played muted weather reports I didn't watch. Instead, I opened my laptop, pulled up the folder labeled Cabin Deed. I had saved a scanned copy years ago when Grandpa passed. My name was still on it, sole owner since 2018. Funny how people forget legal facts when feelings get in the way of fairness. I also opened another file, emails between Velma and me, going back nearly a decade. Promises, requests, strings of guilt disguised as concern. I read them without blinking, let them pile up in my chest like frost on glass. There's a moment between betrayal and revenge where everything is still. That's where I sat, for hours, cross-legged on a bed that wasn't mine, in a room that smelled faintly of bleach and old carpet. And I realized something in me had broken, not shattered, not ruined, but split cleanly. Like something that was supposed to break, finally did. The light from the motel window faded slowly, giving way to the quiet hum of the parking lot below. I didn't remember falling asleep. I must have drifted off with the laptop still open on my lap. When I finally sat up, my back stiff from the unforgiving mattress, the digital clock on the nightstand read 6:52 a.m. I packed my things without noise. By the time I pulled into the driveway of my rental on the southern edge of Kalispell, the sun had barely lifted itself over the tree line. The house was cold but familiar, unbothered by what had happened the day before. I wasn't. Inside, I turned the heat up, kicked off my shoes, and headed straight for the hallway closet. Behind the winter coats and an old box of Christmas lights was a drawer built into the wall, small and shallow, where I kept the things I didn't want to remember, but couldn't bring myself to throw away. I slid it open and reached for a bundle wrapped in twine. Birthday cards, postcards, little notes Velma used to tape to my lunchbox when I was still someone she seemed proud of. One envelope was different, yellowed, torn at the edges. It was addressed in her handwriting, 2002. I recognized it immediately. I unfolded the single sheet inside. Just 7 words written in slanted cursive. "One day, this cabin will be yours." I stared at it for a long while, like it might disintegrate if I blinked. A single piece of paper had carried a decade of belief. I had turned down jobs in other cities because of that sentence. I had stayed close, made repairs, paid bills, all because I thought I was the one meant to protect it, to keep it whole. I took a picture of the letter and sent it to Velma. No message, just the image. She called within minutes. "You still have that thing?" she asked, her voice flat. "You wrote it." "I barely remember. You were upset about something, and I don't know. Wrote it to calm you down." "You told me the cabin would be mine," I said, though the words already felt weightless. "Oh, Kira," she sighed. "You take everything so seriously. That was over 20 years ago." "I know exactly how long it's been." A pause. I could almost hear her smiling on the other end, like I was amusing, not angry. "You've always had such a dramatic streak," she said lightly. "Honestly, I thought you would have grown out of it by now." I didn't answer. I ended the call. By the time I'd changed out of my work clothes and sat down at the kitchen table with a lukewarm cup of tea, the disbelief had settled into something else. Disgust, maybe. Not just at her. At myself, too. For buying into a story that had never belonged to me. The knock on my door came around 7:45 that evening. I didn't expect visitors. When I opened it, there stood Imelda Crane, my former high school math teacher, now a retiree who still wore orthopedic sandals with confidence and parked her Chevy crooked at the curb like she owned the street. "Did I catch you at a bad time?" she asked. "No, come in." She stepped inside, holding a reusable grocery bag and a look that meant business. "I wasn't sure I should say anything, but I didn't want you blindsided," she began. "Your father and Reuben were in town last week. They were meeting with a lawyer. I know the woman. They were at the same property office my niece works in." I didn't interrupt. I just waited. "They're doing something with the cabin, transferring it. It wasn't just talk. There were papers, signatures." I nodded. "They didn't mention anything to me." Imelda's expression softened. "Honey, I don't think they plan to." I thanked her. She didn't stay long. After she left, I sat down again, same spot, same table, and reopened my laptop. I pulled up the deed Grandpa had mailed me the year he died. Still in my name. No liens, no co-signers, no shared ownership. I cross-checked the parcel number. Everything matched. The last update was 2018. They were trying to steal something that was already mine. I stared at the screen for a few minutes, then opened a blank note. I typed 3 lines. "Confirm property activity. Consult with Nadine, lawyer. Never ask for what's already yours." Then I sat back and whispered to myself, not with rage, but with a certainty that felt like a slow ignition. They forgot who they're dealing with. I didn't sleep that night, but I wouldn't call it insomnia. It was more like a kind of quiet pacing inside my own head, rearranging facts, cutting out the noise. Around 4:30 a.m., I finally gave up and made a pot of coffee. The house was dark, but my mind was sharper than it had been in weeks. I sat at the kitchen table, steam curling from the rim of the mug, and checked my phone out of habit. That's when I saw the notification. Fisk Family Chat, 3. New messages. I almost didn't open it. That group thread was mostly logistics for potlucks and baby showers, which I was rarely included in beyond the "can you bring napkins" level. But I did open it. Corinne had written, "Kira can stay in the guest loft, right? Or do we need her to handle the food again like last year?" Ruben had reacted with a thumbs up. And then, someone, probably my cousin Jane, added, "She's good at being invisible." I stared at the screen for a few seconds too long. The phone dimmed, then went black. I didn't reply. I didn't type out the long, cutting message that formed in my brain. I didn't remind them that the guest loft had no heating, no privacy, and still had water damage they refused to fix. I didn't say a word. Instead, I took a screenshot. That afternoon, I invited Velma over for coffee. She arrived 15 minutes late, tapping her sunglasses against her purse like she was irritated by the very idea of the invitation. "This place still smells like cedar," she said as she sat down. "You know that's a sign of poor ventilation." I poured her coffee, set the screenshot face up on the table between us. She glanced at it, then at me. "You know your brother," she said, sipping. "He doesn't mean anything by it." "And Corinne?" I asked. Velma shrugged, like she was swatting away a mosquito. "You've always had a strong reaction to things, Kira. You hold on to things too long. It's exhausting." "I just wanted to know," I said, keeping my voice flat, "if I'm a guest or a relative." She smiled, not warmly. "You're overthinking it again. Why does it matter where you sleep? The cabin's big enough for all of us." Except, it wasn't. Not when the kitchen was being remodeled for Corinne's Pinterest board and I was treated like a part-time staffer. Not when every new picture frame excluded me by default. Later that week, Sunday afternoon came with church and small talk and the annual fall bake sale. I didn't want to go, but I brought lemon pie out of muscle memory more than spirit. It sat untouched for over an hour. I stayed close to the booth, kept to myself. The sun was soft that day, filtered through cloud cover, and the crisp air made it easier to stay silent. Until I heard my name. Velma stood with 2 other women near the edge of the tables, paper cups in hand. She was smiling, performing really. "Oh, Kira," she said with a chuckle, loud enough to carry. She's always been the dramatic one. She clung to things like ownership and fairness like it was her job. Thought the cabin was hers. Would you believe that? One of the women turned to look at me. Her gaze wasn't cruel. It was confused, like she didn't know whether to pity me or dismiss me. I held on to the pie tin. My hands didn't tremble. I didn't smile. I walked away. Back home that night, I opened the old diary I kept tucked behind my filing cabinet, a green spiral notebook with a cartoon fox on the front, something I'd nearly tossed a dozen times. Inside were years of uneven writing, scribbled thoughts, things I hadn't meant for anyone to read. I flipped to a random page. "Ruben got in trouble today, but Dad said he was just expressing himself. When I cried, he told me to stop being weak. My handwriting looked like someone else's." I closed the book slowly and leaned back in my chair. It was never that they forgot me. That would have been easier. Forgetting is careless. This was curated, a calculated removal. They made space for me not to exist. And for the first time, I wasn't trying to crawl back into that space. By the time I pushed the diary back onto the shelf, the sky outside had already shifted to gray. I made a cup of instant oatmeal, left half of it untouched, and changed into jeans and a plain sweatshirt. If they were going to try and rewrite the story, I wanted to be sure I had the pages they couldn't edit. At 9:15 a.m., I walked into the Kalispell County Clerk's office. The woman behind the desk, maybe in her 20s, nervous fingers tapping against her keyboard, looked up when I cleared my throat. "Hi," I said. "I need to check property records on a parcel I own. Just want to confirm there haven't been any changes filed." "Of course," she replied, pulling her cardigan tighter across her shoulders. "Do you have the parcel number?" I gave it to her, watched her screen reflect in her glasses as she typed. The pause came after just a few seconds. Her lips parted slightly before she spoke. "There's something here. A preliminary reassignment filed 2 weeks ago. Looks like it hasn't fully processed yet, but it's logged." "Who's listed as the transferee?" She hesitated. Then, "Reuben Fisk." I didn't flinch. I just nodded once. "Can I get a printed copy of the document?" She handed me a sheet without making eye contact. I walked back to my car slowly, sat in the driver's seat with the engine off and the windows cracked, letting in just enough of the morning air to keep my hands from trembling. The page sat in my lap like a warning label. They were doing it. Not talking about it, not dreaming about it, actually doing it. I pulled out my phone and texted Marin. "Me. Did you know they were filing to move the cabin title to Reuben?" It took a few minutes before 3 dots appeared. Marin. "I didn't know it was filed, but they've been talking about it for a while. They thought you wouldn't notice until it was done." Me. "Of course they did." Marin. "I'm sorry, Kira." I put the phone down and leaned my head against the headrest. They really thought I'd never check, that I'd just stay quiet, like always, that I'd keep showing up with food and apologies, while they made plans with my property like I was just a tenant too timid to knock on the landlord's door. That night, I sat at my desk with every light in the house on. I had 3 windows open on my laptop: the property record, Reuben's recent social media posts, and the family chat archive. 2 weeks earlier, Reuben had posted a photo of the cabin kitchen. Caption: Phase 1, backsplash mock-up. Corinne's pic. She's got an eye. I hadn't seen it before. I scrolled through the comments. Velma. Can't wait to see it when it's done. Jane, my cousin. Y'all are turning that place into a dream home. No mention of me. No question about who owned it. It was as if I didn't exist. I opened the chat thread. A week ago, Reuben had texted. Reuben. Corinne says the mountain light would look great above the sink. Velma. Yes. Rustic but clean. Jane. Totally. Not one person asked, does Kira know? Not one. I scrolled higher. A conversation from late September. Corinne. If we start now, we could have the guest rooms repainted before Thanksgiving. Velma. Don't forget to ask if she's coming first. Or maybe don't. I snapped the laptop shut, got up, poured a glass of water, and drank it standing. Then I picked up my phone and called Reuben. He answered after the second ring. Hey, he said, casual like we hadn't just spent the last month on opposite ends of a silent war. I have a question, I said. Okay. So the backsplash isn't just hypothetical? There was a pause. Then, look, you don't even really use the place. You're always working or gone. You said it yourself last summer. You didn't even sleep there for 2 months. It's in my name, I said quietly. Since 2018. You knew that. It's family, he replied, voice tightening. What's yours is all of ours. I exhaled once, just enough to reset. I don't recall ever signing over my property in the name of group sentiment. He laughed, not kindly. You're blowing this out of proportion. We're just updating the place. It needed work. That's what thieves say when they redecorate before they rob you. You're being dramatic, Kira. You're being dishonest. I hung up. No final word. No threat. Just a click, clean and clear. It wasn't about the backsplash or the light fixture. It wasn't even about the cabin anymore. It was about being replaced so subtly that even the walls stopped expecting your voice. But they underestimated me the first time. They won't get the chance to do it again. The wind had picked up by the time I turned onto the gravel road leading to the cabin. Dried pine needles whipped against the windshield as I slowed near the mailbox, half expecting to find something hostile stuffed inside it. Nothing yet. It was just after 5:30 on Friday evening when I parked, the sky fading into that early autumn gold that tricks you into thinking it's still warm outside. It wasn't. The air had turned. The kind of cold that makes you wish you brought gloves, even if it's not winter yet. I hadn't told anyone I was coming. I didn't need to. The last time I waited for an invitation, I got edited out of a family photo. When I knocked, I heard shuffling. Footsteps, low voices. The door opened a few inches, and then my father's face appeared behind it, creased with confusion more than anything else. "We're just finishing up dinner," he said. "Good," I replied, stepping forward. "I didn't come to eat. I came to talk." Luther opened the door wider. Behind him, Corinne stood in the kitchen, arms crossed, as if she'd been waiting for this moment all day. Reuben wasn't in sight, but I could hear the familiar clinking of a fork against glass. He was still at the table. I stepped inside, scanned the space. The kitchen smelled like pork roast and apple cider. It used to be a comforting smell. Now it felt like a scene set up for someone else's play. I walked over and sat in the armchair near the fireplace, the one Velma always kept a quilt on, even when it was 90 degrees outside. She entered a moment later, wiping her hands on a dish towel and giving me a look I couldn't quite decode. Displeased, but polite. Like I'd arrived late to a performance, and she had to pretend not to mind. Reuben finally came around the corner, wiping his mouth with a napkin. "Kira?" he said. Flat. No smile, just acknowledgement. I didn't answer right away. I waited for the silence to stretch thin before I broke it. "There's a deed transfer in process," I said, steady. "Filed with the county 2 weeks ago. It lists you as the new title holder." Velma scoffed before anyone else could speak. "That place has been in the family for decades. It's not yours, it's ours. It's always been part of the Fisk name." I nodded once. "Except legally, it's mine. Since 2018. Reuben cleared his throat. "We didn't think you'd care. You're always working, traveling. You're distant, Kira." "Distant doesn't mean disposable," I said, quieter than I intended. "You're using my absence as permission." Velma narrowed her eyes. "You act like we owe you something. We raised you. You wouldn't have a place in this world without us. And now you want to take what's ours because you feel—" "What? Left out?" I didn't blink. "I paid for Dad's hospital bills when the insurance didn't cover the anesthesia. I paid Mom's dental work, every last veneer. I paid for Reuben's car insurance during both years he was unemployed. The only thing I didn't pay for was Corinne's yoga retreat, but that's probably next on someone's list." Corinne's lips parted. "We never asked you to." "No," I said, turning to her. "But you never offered either." I looked back at Velma. "I did it because I thought it mattered. Because I thought we mattered, even when I wasn't invited, even when I wasn't mentioned, even when you looked past me like I was air." Luther spoke then, his voice low but sharp. "You're always keeping tabs, Kira. That's not generosity. That's control. That's a ledger." I stood. If it were a ledger, I'd be sending invoices instead of reminders. I've never once asked for payback, but I'm being called ungrateful for protecting something that was handed to me and stolen in pieces. Let's talk about that word the next time you flip on the light switch or open a fridge you didn't buy groceries for. Reuben stepped forward. "We didn't think you'd fight this hard." "I know." I walked to the door, paused long enough to leave a silence in the air that wasn't dramatic. It was deliberate. "You thought being quiet meant I'd never speak up," I said, "but you mistook self-control for consent. That's on you." Then I left. I didn't drive straight home after walking out of the cabin. I stopped at a gas station and filled the tank halfway, even though I had enough to get back. I stood there with the nozzle in my hand, watching the numbers roll, listening to the automated voice thank me for my loyalty. That phrase stuck with me. Loyalty. Funny how everyone expects it, but rarely returns it. Sunday morning came quietly. I sat in a booth at Finch's Cafe on Main Street, the kind of place with torn leather menus and mismatched mugs. It was early enough that I had the corner to myself. The waitress, Dana, already knew I'd take black coffee and oatmeal without asking. I was halfway through the bowl when I saw a hand slide a newspaper onto the table beside me. "Thought you'd want to see this," said a voice I didn't recognize. By the time I turned to look, the woman was already walking out. She wore a heavy wool coat and moved like someone used to leaving quickly. I unfolded the Flathead Beacon and stared at the front page. Local Family Preserves Generational Cabin. Reuben Fisk leads restoration project. There it was. A photo of the cabin. My cabin. The same porch I rebuilt after a storm took out the front steps. The shutters I repainted by hand one summer, while everyone else was at the lake. The kitchen window that still had the spiderweb crack from when I dropped the garden hose too hard against the sill. Not one word about me, not even a mention. I read the article twice, slower the second time, as if looking for a typo that would explain the omission. Nothing. Just quotes from Reuben and one from Velma. "We're so proud of Reuben, taking the lead on what really matters, keeping family history alive." I finished my coffee in 2 long swallows and sent a text to Marin. Me. "Did you see the Beacon today?" Marin. "Don't tell me they printed it." Me. "Front page, full story, I'm not in it." Marin. "They told the reporter you didn't want to be included, said you were stepping back from involvement." Of course they did. That afternoon, the town held its annual artisan fair near the old high school gym. I went because I needed to be seen. Not for the sake of vanity, but because I wanted to make it clear I was still here, still present, still paying property taxes and fixing frozen pipes and answering when the alarm company called about power outages. Velma was posted at one of the community booths, dressed in a tailored red coat and wearing that smile she saved for people who didn't know her well enough to ask deeper questions. "Isn't that your daughter?" a woman asked her, nodding in my direction. Velma didn't look. She kept her gaze on the flyer she was handing out. "She used to live here," she said with a light laugh. "But she's been gone so long, I don't think she considers this home anymore." I walked over, picked up one of the brochures, and met her eyes. The corner of her mouth twitched. Not quite a smile, not quite regret. "Then I suppose it's time I stop paying for the electricity here, too," I said, folding the paper in half and placing it back on the table. She didn't say a word. I didn't need her to. That evening, I poured myself a glass of water, sat at the kitchen table, and called Nadine. She answered on the second ring. "You ready?" she asked, no greeting needed. "It's time," I said. "I want a formal cease and desist, use of my image, my property, references to the cabin or to me in any future public statements, and I want a letter of eviction served to Reuben, Velma, and Luther. Monday morning, no delays." There was a pause. Then, "I've been waiting for you to say that." I looked at the newspaper one last time, folded it, placed it in the bottom drawer of the file cabinet labeled Fisk, Legal. "I'm done being edited out of my own story," I said. Monday morning came colder than expected, even for October in Kalispell. I wrapped a scarf around my neck, not for warmth, but for structure. Something about the added pressure made my spine feel straighter. At 7:43 a.m., 3 certified letters left Nadine's office. By 9:10, Reuben, Velma, and Luther each had them in hand. Cease and desist. Unauthorized use of my name, likeness, and property. Notice of sole legal title holder, dated and notarized. 30-day eviction warning. Luther was the first to call. "You out of your mind?" he snapped before I even said hello. "No," I said calmly. "Not anymore." He hung up. Velma's call came 5 minutes later. It started with silence, then tears. Not real ones. The kind meant to trip you up emotionally, to make you forget your own name. "This is how you treat your parents?" she whispered. "After everything we gave you?" I almost laughed. "You gave me one thing, once. A name. Everything else I built on my own, Velma." She said something else. I didn't catch it. I'd already set the phone down on the counter and walked away. By the end of the day, they had gathered Marin. They called it a family meeting. No spouses, no children, just the core. I wasn't invited, but I knew it would happen. That's why I'd called Marin 2 days ago. I need you to go, I said, and I need you to record everything. Kira, she hesitated, you're asking me to spy on your own family. I'm asking you to give me the truth, something they're never going to do voluntarily. So Marin went. I didn't hear from her until well after dark. Around 8:30, my phone buzzed while I was sitting in my truck outside a closed florist shop, half watching the light from inside flicker as the owner cleaned up. Her message was short. Marin, you'll want to hear this. Attached was a voice recording. I played it. Turn the volume up. Let it fill the cab like smoke. Luther's voice came first. She was never supposed to keep the cabin. We just let her believe it until we figured out what Ruben needed. Hell, she was barely using it. It's not like she was building a family there. Velma chimed in, her voice sugar-coated but sharp underneath. Kira always needed something to cling to. Some project, some cause. I suppose we should have corrected her sooner, but she seemed happy playing caretaker. There was laughter. Ruben, probably. Then another voice I couldn't place, saying, well, she's making it difficult now. To which Velma replied, almost cheerfully, she always does. I didn't cry. My jaw clenched, but not from sadness. It was the kind of tension you get when someone hands you the last puzzle piece after you've stared at the missing spot for days. I forwarded the file to Nadine with one line. Use this. 10 minutes later, Nadine called me. I'm adding it to the eviction packet, she said. I'll file a supplemental declaration and, if necessary, prepare a public statement. I want it ready, I said. If they try to spin this again, I'll go public myself. You sure? She asked. That's a war you can't unstart. They started it. I'm just refusing to lose quietly. The next day, I printed a copy of the transcript and highlighted every line that mattered. I slipped it into a manila folder, added it to the growing pile on my dining table. Everything I'd tried to handle in silence, they'd weaponized. Now I had the weapons, and I wasn't aiming to wound. I was aiming for truth. By Tuesday morning, the leaves had gone brittle on the trees, clinging only because they hadn't been told to fall yet. I sat at the breakfast bar with my phone face down, a slice of toast cooling on the plate in front of me. Nadine's message had come through an hour earlier. PDF attached. Subject line simple. Fisk v. Bellamy. Civil claim. Motion for mediation. They were suing me for family contribution, for emotional equity, for parental investment. It read like a passive-aggressive Hallmark card stapled to a legal threat. Their lawyer, someone out of Missoula I'd never met, claimed I'd unjustly withheld what was built through generational love and sacrifice. He used phrases like unspoken understanding and cultural inheritance. I forwarded the file to Nadine. She replied 2 minutes later, Nadine, this is bluffing wrapped in sentimentality. Me? Let's unwrap it. The mediation was scheduled for Thursday morning. No courtroom, no jury. Just a conference room with bad lighting and a mediator trained to smile through dysfunction. I arrived early, wore a gray blazer over black jeans and boots I hadn't worn since the last funeral in our family. I parked 2 spaces away from Ruben's truck. Inside the building, a receptionist with soft eyes asked if I'd like coffee. I declined. My stomach didn't need the help turning. The door opened behind me. Velma entered first, arms folded tight over her chest. Ruben walked behind her, flipping through a manila folder like he expected to be called on. Luther came in last, jaw clenched, saying nothing. We sat around the oval table in awkward silence. The mediator, a CA-7LM woman in her 50s named Carla, opened the session. We're not here to punish, only to clarify, she said. This space is neutral. Neutral. I almost smiled. Velma jumped in quickly. We're not trying to hurt anyone, she said, hands folded neatly. But it's not right that everything just goes to Kira when we've all been part of that cabin's life. Reuben nodded. I helped with the roof repairs. I handled the yard work when she wasn't around. Luther said nothing, just stared. I listened. Then I reached into my bag and handed Carla a flash drive. I think we should all hear something before we continue. Carla looked at me, then at the others. Do you mind? Reuben shifted. What is it? Your words, I said, when you thought I wouldn't hear them. Carla inserted the drive, adjusted the volume, and hit play. Velma's voice came through first. She lives alone. Why does she need the cabin? Luther followed. It was always going to be Reuben's. She just doesn't know when to let go. And then Velma again, soft and syrupy. She always needed something to pour herself into. Poor thing, letting her believe we'd give it to her was the easiest way to keep the peace. The room froze. Reuben stared at the table. Velma looked away. Luther finally blinked. Carla let the recording finish. No commentary, no crosstalk. When it ended, she folded her hands. This doesn't meet the standards for emotional equity, she said. There's no contractual claim, no shared financial burden on the property. What it does qualify for is eviction. Velma opened her mouth, closed it. Her face turned the shade of wet clay. Reuben muttered, You really meant it all along. I looked straight at him. More than any of you ever did. By Friday afternoon, I returned to the cabin with the sheriff's deputy and a real estate appraiser. The drive there was quiet. The fields had lost their green. The air smelled like pine needles and stale apology. I stepped out first. The deputy followed. Reuben's truck was still in the driveway. Inside, boxes were half-packed. Corinne glared at me like I'd kicked over her garden. Velma sat on the couch with a tissue, theatrically dabbing at eyes that didn't look red. Luther stood by the mantel, hands on his hips, like he still thought posture meant power. You have 72 hours, the deputy said. She's the rightful owner, paperwork's final. Velma gasped. You're evicting your own family? I didn't flinch. I'm enforcing the truth. Reuben looked at me, something resigned in his face now. It was never about the house for you, was it? I didn't answer that. Because it had been. Once. But not anymore. 3 weeks passed. I stood in the doorway of the now empty cabin, keys in one hand, breath slow. The air was thinner than I remembered, maybe from the cold, or maybe because the place felt bigger, without the weight of secrets pressing in from every wall. The boxes had been shipped. The locks changed. No more floral curtains Velma insisted on. No more framed pictures of Reuben fishing on the mantel. Just hardwood floors and the echo of everything I had finally said out loud. Outside, the leaves had turned full amber and ochre, just like the fall I first painted the porch myself at 26, after Luther forgot to follow through on his promise to hire someone. I had done it with my own hands, a stiff brush, and one long Saturday of silence. At the time, I told myself it was an act of love. Now I see it was proof I could build something without their permission. I ran my fingers along the edge of the kitchen counter, tracing an old chip in the granite. The last time Reuben had slammed a pan here, he said he didn't mean to, but the look he gave me said otherwise. And I had cleaned it up like I always did, both the counter and the conversation. Today, there was nothing left to tidy. I whispered, not to anyone, just into the open room. It was never the wood or the walls I wanted. It was a place that remembered me. And the thing was, it never did. I closed the door for the final time. Didn't lock it. The new owners would do that when they arrived next week. I had sold it fast, below market. I didn't want to make money on it. I wanted it gone. Off my books, out of my bloodstream. That night, I sat on my porch in Kalispell, knees tucked under a worn quilt, mug of herbal tea cooling in my palms. A text buzzed in. It was Velma. You got what you wanted. Hope you're happy now. No punctuation, just sharpness. I stared at it for almost an hour. I could have said 100 things. Could have sent copies of the utility bills, the receipts for groceries, the therapist notes I never submitted to insurance. Instead, I typed one sentence. I'm at peace. I hope someday you can be too. Then I deleted the thread. No screenshot, no save, no archive. Letting go doesn't always look dramatic. Sometimes it's just the act of choosing not to hit reply. A month later, I moved to Hamilton, a town small enough to disappear in, but big enough to start again without explanation. I leased a small space on the corner of 5th and Grove, painted in soft green with a tin mailbox shaped like a birdhouse. The sign outside read, Bellamy & Co., Grief Recovery and Family Transition Services. People came. Slowly, then steadily. Women mostly. Some young, some older. Some who had fled bruises they never talked about. Others who just felt unseen in rooms filled with people they loved. I didn't tell them about the cabin, or the lawsuit, or the photo albums where I was always just outside the frame. But I knew what to say when they asked how to begin again. Sometimes survival isn't leaving something, I'd say. It's staying gone. One Tuesday morning, a newspaper envelope arrived at the office. No note, no return address. Inside was a folded clipping from the Flathead Beacon. Correction notice. Ownership clarification. The property known as the Fisk family cabin, as referenced in prior articles, is legally and solely owned by Kira Bellamy. I didn't frame it. I didn't even finish reading it. I slid it into the bottom drawer of my desk, under a client consent form and 2 utility bills. Then I walked over to the window, watched as a cloud moved over the ridge, casting a long shadow over the Bitterroot River. And for the first time in years, the silence around me didn't ache. It didn't ask for anything. It just let me be. They didn't just lose the house. They lost the script. And I didn't need an audience to believe the ending.
Hi there. I'm Aileen. My dad screamed at me, called me ungrateful, and told me to get out and not come back. So I left. But what if I told you? That wasn't even the worst part. What if I told you I'd spent years quietly paying their bills, only to find out they were stealing behind my back? That my own mother faked being sick just to get a few $100s more out of me? That my brother trashed my car? And they all said I should just let it go? Yeah. You think getting kicked out was the end? It was just the beginning. I stepped inside with 2 grocery bags cutting into my fingers, the cold still clinging to my coat. The air in the house wasn't warm. It never was. Not in temperature, not in spirit. Travis was on the couch like always, eyes glued to his game controller, not even a glance in my direction. Mom stood by the sink, drying a glass that was already spotless, avoiding eye contact. My father, Gordon, was waiting in the living room doorway like a judge ready to deliver a sentence. You got a minute? He said without even a hello. I nodded, set the bags on the counter. Sure. What's going on? His lips tightened. We've been talking, and it's time you step up. I knew that tone, the same one he used when I was 8 and forgot to sweep the porch. Except this wasn't about chores. Step up how? He folded his arms. The mortgage. It's crushing us. You've got a good job. It's time you cover it, fully. We can't keep doing this month to month. I blinked. Wait, what? I've already been helping? Groceries, utilities? Mom chimed in without turning around. You make more than any of us ever did. You live alone, no kids, no husband. What are you spending it on anyway? Travis snorted from the couch, probably on her new couch or yoga crap. I turned to him, jaw clenched. Excuse me? You're always acting like you're better than us, he muttered, not looking away from the screen. Maybe it's time you proved you're part of the family. I took a breath, trying to keep it together. I've been supporting this house in pieces for years. Mortgage? That's a huge step, and it's not something I agreed to. Dad stepped forward. You're being selfish, Aileen. We raised you, fed you, gave you a roof. I was flipping burgers at 16 to buy my own textbooks, I snapped. He didn't flinch. We expected more from you. I looked at each of them, Travis lounging like he owned the place, Mom acting like I was the stranger, Dad judging me like I was the failure. My chest was tight, But something in me shifted. I'd carried their weight for years, quietly, out of guilt, out of duty. But now they wanted my spine too. No, I said simply. What do you mean, no? Dad's voice rose. I'm not taking over the mortgage. There was a pause, then his face turned red. You ungrateful little brat, get out, and don't come back. The room went still. I looked at him, then at Mom, her face unreadable, and Travis, still pretending I didn't exist. I didn't cry, I didn't yell. I just grabbed my bag, turned, and walked out. The front door closed behind me like a judge's gavel. Cold air hit my face, but I welcomed it. He said I wasn't welcome anymore, but in that moment, I realized I'd never truly been. By the time I got back to my apartment, the sky had turned an ugly slate. I didn't turn on the lights, I didn't take off my coat. I just sank into the couch and stared at nothing while the silence settled thick around me. The grocery bags were still in the car. I couldn't care less. Let the milk spoil. Let the eggs freeze. I wasn't crying. I hadn't since my 20s. The ache didn't come out in tears. It sat in my jaw, in my fists, in the throbbing vein at my temple. My father's words kept replaying like a broken voicemail. Ungrateful. Don't come back. Ungrateful. The word gnawed at something deep inside me. For years I paid the light bills when they couldn't. Covered the heating bill one winter when the furnace went out. Paid for Travis's rent after he got evicted. Not once, but twice. Never a thank you. Just silence. Or worse, expectation. Marla used to call it helping your family, but it never went both ways. They never once asked how I was doing. Not after my breakup. Not after I got laid off that one year. All they cared about was what I could provide. Like the time the mortgage hit 3 months behind. I paid it, quietly, so they wouldn't lose the house. No fanfare. No recognition. I wasn't doing it for praise, but I didn't expect to be treated like a burden either. And then there was that day in 2021. I'd refused to lie on a reference for Travis. He was applying for a management job he had no business landing. That same night, Gordon followed me into the garage. He stood there, arms crossed, said, "If you can't back up your brother, don't expect a piece of this house when I die." It wasn't even subtle. "You mean the house I've been helping you keep?" I asked. He didn't blink. Family loyalty isn't transactional. I remember choking on that. Loyalty? I'd been breaking my back to keep them afloat, and he was standing there like a king, threatening to erase me over one honest decision. I didn't speak for 2 weeks after that. Not out of fear, out of exhaustion. Tonight, as I sat in the dark, that memory came roaring back. The cold words, the shrug of entitlement. He threatened to cut me off, but all I ever wanted was to cut free. I didn't sleep much after that night. The next few days passed in a strange sort of haze. Work, coffee, a few half-eaten meals. My phone stayed silent, like everyone in that house had collectively agreed I no longer existed. That part was fine. I preferred the quiet over fake apologies. It was Wednesday morning when I noticed the alert from my banking app. Auto payment failed. I frowned. It was for the monthly transfer I used to send to my dad's account, the one labeled mortgage support. I had paused it after getting kicked out, but something about seeing the notification stirred something in me. I sat at my desk, half distracted from my spreadsheets, and opened the folder where I used to keep all the payment confirmations. The dates lined up, amounts steady. I had done my part, every single month. On my lunch break, I stepped outside and found a quiet bench in the office courtyard. I tapped in the number to the mortgage provider. Just curiosity, I told myself, just to confirm it was still being covered without me. A woman named Tanya picked up, polite and scripted. I gave her the address, said I used to help make payments. She pulled up the record. There was a pause. "I'm seeing multiple missed payments," she said gently. "Looks like the account has been delinquent for nearly 8 months. 8 months. I blinked. "I'm sorry, that can't be right. I sent money every month, thousands, directly to my father." She cleared her throat. "We've received partial amounts a couple of times, but nothing consistent. And not under your name." I didn't respond. My hands felt cold, even in the sunlight. I stared ahead at nothing, hearing the buzzing in my ears grow louder. They hadn't paid. Not with the money I sent, not once. They lied. They looked me in the face every Sunday, complained about bills, begged for help, and never said a word about being months behind. They took what I gave and used it for… What? I didn't even want to guess. I hung up. Back in the office stairwell, I stared at the wall for a long time. Everything they'd said, about helping the family, about doing my part, it was never about keeping the lights on or saving the house. They didn't just take my money, they gambled with my trust. Now it's my turn. That night I couldn't stop pacing. The apartment lights were off, but the glow from the street lamps outside painted long shadows across the floor. I needed quiet, stillness, but none of it came. Then my phone buzzed. Mom, 2 missed calls. I stared at the screen until it dimmed. She hadn't called since the night Dad screamed at me to leave. Now suddenly she remembered I existed? I didn't call back, didn't even open the voicemail. But that name, glowing on the screen, pulled me back to something I thought I'd buried. It was last fall, October, I think. I was at the office scrambling to finish a project when my phone rang. Marla's voice trembled on the other end. I collapsed, she whispered. I was alone in the bathroom for hours. I couldn't move. I'm scared, honey. I dropped everything, cleared my afternoon meetings, booked the earliest train back to Medford, sat the whole ride with my chest in knots, imagining her unconscious on the tile, cold and helpless. I reached the house, breathless, heart pounding. She was in the living room, on the couch, eating crackers and watching game shows. Her face lit up like I'd just brought her a birthday cake. Oh, honey, you got here fast. I'm feeling a little better now. Can we talk about that loan I mentioned? I didn't even sit down. My body just locked. You told me you collapsed, I said. She waved her hand. I did, for a little bit, but I just needed you to come. You've been so distant. That night, I wrote her a check. I didn't speak much, just handed it over and left. I hated myself for not screaming. Back in my kitchen now, I leaned against the counter and stared at my phone again. This wasn't forgetfulness. This wasn't a misunderstanding. That day wasn't the only time. It was a pattern. Lies wrapped in love. Guilt wearing a mother's perfume. I opened the missed call log and deleted it without listening. That was the last time I came running, I said aloud to no one. The next time they cried wolf, they'd find no one waiting at the door. The next morning, I was halfway down the stairs of my building, keys in hand, when I saw it. My car sat under a dusting of pollen and early spring chill, but it was the deep, jagged scratch slicing across the driver's door that stopped me cold. One side mirror hung limp, cracked in two like it had been kicked. The vandal didn't even try to hide it. It was personal, precise. Only a handful of people knew where I lived now, and I could count on one hand the ones who would want to send a message. I snapped a photo, heart pounding, and went back upstairs. Travis picked up on the second ring. Wow, you're up early, he said, like this was a Sunday brunch call. You touched my car. A pause. Paranoid much? Maybe some punk just didn't like your parking job. Only 3 people know this address, I said. You're one of them. He laughed, a slow, greasy sound. And if I did? You gonna call the cops on your own brother? That's rich. I didn't answer. He filled the silence. We're family, Aileen. This whole grudge you're holding, it's ugly. You don't cut blood over a few scratches. I hung up. Less than 10 minutes later, my phone rang again. Mom. Aileen, honey, please don't escalate this, she said in that overly sweet tone she saved for when she was about to excuse something awful. Travis has been under a lot of stress. He didn't mean anything by it. He vandalized my car, Mom. Oh, he's just lashing out. You know how sensitive he is? I raised you to be more reasonable than this. I clenched my jaw. You raised me to clean up after him. She went quiet. This isn't stress. This is destruction, I said. Next time I press charges. You don't mean that. I do. She tried softening again. Come on, baby. You really want to go that far over a mirror? They wanted me to play nice while they lit matches. I warned them. Next time I'd bring water and the fire marshal. That night, I couldn't sleep. I sat at the kitchen table sipping lukewarm tea, flipping through old notebooks I hadn't opened in months. My eyes skimmed a post-it I'd slapped on a page back in 2022. Missing $200. Don't forget. I paused. My stomach tightened. I remembered exactly when that was. The week I visited home because Marla claimed her arthritis had flared up. I stayed the weekend, even ran errands, left my purse in the guest room while I helped her cook. The cash was gone when I got back. I'd chalked it up to a mistake. Maybe I miscounted, but I wrote the note anyway, just in case. And then the memory sharpened. That night, I caught Travis coming out of my room. He smiled like nothing was off. "Looking for nail clippers," he'd said, tapping his pocket. I'd gone straight to him. "You took from me," he scoffed. "What are you talking about?" I told him the amount, the missing money, the note. He laughed, real casual. "Wow, paranoid much?" I turned to Mom. "You're seriously going to let him lie to my face?" She waved me off. "You probably misplaced it. You know how scattered you get when you're tired." "I checked the hallway cam," I said. "It caught him going into my room when I was outside with you." She didn't flinch. "Maybe he needed it for something important. He's been having a hard time." "Then ask," I snapped. "Don't steal." "He's your brother," she said. "Don't turn this into drama." I left early the next morning. Didn't say goodbye. Now at my kitchen table, I opened my banking app and started changing every password. Set 2-factor codes. Removed all linked accounts. They stole from me once, lied to my face, and got away with it. Not anymore. They could steal from me once. But now, every boundary I draw comes with consequences. By the time the next weekend rolled around, my resolve had crystallized into something sharper, cold, precise. So when Judith, the neighbor in Unit 3B, knocked on my door with an invitation to the HOA's monthly mixer, I didn't think much of it. "Come by," she said. "Light snacks, a few announcements, nothing heavy." I figured small talk and cheap wine might distract me. What I didn't expect was to walk into the community clubhouse and see my father standing at the front of the room, flipping through stapled papers like he was about to deliver a sermon. I froze mid-step. He didn't see me yet. Marla sat beside him, pretending to be modest with her eyes downcast and a faux shy smile. Travis leaned against the back wall, arms crossed, face unreadable. I thought about walking out, but Judith had already waved me in, smiling like she was proud to have dragged me there, so I stayed. The meeting opened with routine announcements, parking rules, landscaping updates. I stood near the back, arms folded, but then the mic passed to Gordon and everything changed. "I hate to bring up personal matters," he began, his voice rehearsed and dripping with pity. "But I think this community deserves transparency, especially when someone among us has taken advantage of trust, of family, and of kindness." Heads turned, my stomach clenched. "I have a daughter," he continued, "who many of you know. She's decided that family obligations don't matter anymore, that leaving her ill mother and struggling brother behind is justified if it helps her keep her hands clean. Some even say she took money meant for her brother's treatment, and never looked back." Gasps, whispers. My face burned, but I didn't flinch. Marla pressed a tissue to her nose like she was trying not to cry. Travis smirked. He looked at me then, daring me to explode. I didn't move, didn't shout, didn't give them the performance they were baiting. Instead, I took 3 slow steps forward. The room quieted like someone had cut the audio. I stopped a few feet from Gordon, locked eyes with him, and said calmly, "You just lit a match on everything you once had left." He blinked, lips parted, but I didn't give him time to answer. I turned and walked out. I didn't slam the door, didn't run. I let the silence follow me out, every step echoing louder than any lie he told. They wanted an audience. They'll get one, just not the kind they'll enjoy. I didn't sleep much those 4 nights. Each evening after work, I sat at my kitchen table with a folder, laptop open, combing through emails, bank statements, voicemail transcriptions, everything. Not out of spite, out of necessity. They made it public first. Now I'd make it clear. So when Thursday came and Judith texted, "Tonight's HOA gathering, 7 p.m., you coming?" I replied with just one word, "Yes." I arrived 5 minutes early, clutching a manila folder thick with truth. No nerves this time, only clarity. Inside the clubhouse, the same faces were scattered among folding chairs and coffee-stained tables. Gordon leaned against the podium, looking relaxed. Marla sat stiff beside him, lips pressed. Travis hovered in the back like an uninvited shadow. Judith gave me a subtle nod and slid her bag off the seat next to her. I walked straight to the front and turned to face the room. "Before we begin," I said calmly, "I'd like to respond to some things that were said here 4 days ago." A few people exchanged glances. Gordon smirked. "I didn't come here to argue," I continued, pulling the folder open. "I came to clarify. With evidence." I lifted the first page. "Here are records of every transfer I've made to my parents' account over the last 5 years. Monthly payments, groceries, bills, over $68,000 in total." A few heads turned. A few murmurs rose. "These," I said, holding up printed screenshots, "are emails from Marla asking for help, sometimes calling me at 3 a.m. Next, I played a short clip from my phone. Travis's voice, unmistakable, laughing. "Yeah, I borrowed a little. What, you gonna call the cops on your own brother?" I let the silence settle before the final blow. "This is a mortgage delinquency notice," I said, holding it up. 8 months overdue, even though I sent money every single month. Ask yourself, where did it go? Gordon started to speak, but Judith raised a hand. Let her finish. I turned to the room. They weren't just ungrateful, they lied, they manipulated, and when I stopped playing along, they tried to bury me publicly. I turned back to Gordon. "You dragged my name through the mud in front of these people, but receipts don't lie." He opened his mouth again. The HOA chair cut in sharp. "Sir, I think you should sit down." Marla looked away. Travis shifted uncomfortably. Judith stood beside me. "We always knew who the steady one was." I nodded, swallowing the heat in my throat. "I didn't want this, but I won't be quiet anymore." I handed the folder to the HOA chair and walked out. Not broken, not bitter, just done. This wasn't revenge. This was exposure, and they brought it on themselves. The clubhouse door clicked shut behind me, and for the first time in months, I didn't feel like I had to look over my shoulder. The following days moved quietly. No surprise calls, no guilt-laced voicemails, just stillness. I didn't hear from the HOA, but I heard things. That Gordon lost his contract to manage the community's maintenance budget. That Travis left town. Needed a reset, someone said. Marla stopped showing up to Sunday services altogether. I didn't celebrate. There was nothing victorious about it. It was just air returning to my lungs. One Sunday morning, I slept in with the windows cracked open, the breeze making the blinds sway. My phone didn't ring. No alarms, no demands. I made eggs, ate them slow. Sipped coffee like time wasn't chasing me anymore. Later that afternoon, I walked to the old park near Charles River, the same place I'd go as a teenager when home felt too small and too loud. There I sat on a bench under a wide maple, watching ducks chase each other on the water. A little girl ran circles around her father while he held out a juice pouch. I smiled. Not at them, but at the feeling that nothing in this moment belonged to anyone but me. I didn't bring a phone. No planner. No noise, just myself. When the sun began to dip, I strolled back home. My feet moved slowly, but not out of fatigue, out of comfort. Peace wasn't something I fought for anymore. It just arrived. Back at my apartment, I powered up my laptop to check emails. Near the bottom of my inbox, there it was. One unread message. Subject, "We're sorry." From Marla. I hovered for a beat, then clicked. The message wasn't long. A few lines. The kind of apology that tries to say, "Let's forget," without ever saying, "I was wrong." I read it once, then again. And I archived it. No reply needed. I leaned back, looked around my quiet apartment and whispered, more to myself than anyone else, "I forgive you, but from here, I live for me." Healing isn't loud. Sometimes it just sounds like your own footsteps, walking away for good. Looking back now, I don't carry hate in my chest. I carry clarity. For years, I thought family meant sacrifice without boundaries. That love had to be earned through silence, through doing more, giving more, hurting quietly. But that's not love. That's control wearing a familiar face. If there's one thing I've learned, it's this. You can love your family and still say no. You can care deeply and still walk away when your peace is the price. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is choose yourself. To anyone out there who feels like they owe their soul just to stay accepted, you don't. Your worth is not measured by what you tolerate. Now, I want to hear from you. Have you ever had to walk away from someone you love to finally breathe? What did freedom look like for you? Let's talk in the comments. If this story hit home for you, leave a 1 in the comments. Or tell me where you're watching from. And if it didn't quite land with you, I want to know why. Let's learn together. And hey, if you made it this far, maybe it's time we stay connected. Subscribe for more real stories like this. Stories that dig deep, make us think, and remind us we're not alone. Thanks for listening. Till the next one. Hello, I'm Raylene. I came back for Thanksgiving like I always did, expecting family, warmth, maybe even a little peace. But the house was quiet, cold. Only Grandpa was there, eating leftovers alone. A note on the counter said, I'd know what to do. That wasn't the worst part. They'd used my name to take out a loan, spent Grandpa's pension on spa days and social media ads. My sister wore the watch I bought him like it was hers. And when I confronted them, they played victim. Did they ever really see me as family, or just as someone to use? I pulled into the driveway just past 4. The wind had that Midwest bite to it, dry, sharp, and bitter in the nose. My arms were full, 2 grocery bags and a ceramic pie dish I had carefully wrapped in a towel. I expected the usual noise, pots clanging, someone laughing too loud, the scent of cinnamon rolls or burnt marshmallows. But the porch light was off. No one peeked through the curtains. I knocked anyway, old habit. Then used my spare key. The silence inside slapped me. No clatter from the kitchen, no coat pile near the front door. I stood there in the dim hallway, groceries pressing into my arms, waiting for someone, anyone, to call my name. But there was only the tick of the wall clock and the faint hum of the refrigerator. I set the bags down and stepped slowly toward the kitchen. That's when I saw him, Grandpa, sitting hunched at the table in 2 sweaters, poking at a tray of cold green beans and some limp stuffing with a plastic fork. His hands shook, but he looked up and smiled like I was exactly who he hoped for. I figured you'd come, he said quietly. I blinked, looked past him to the counter. That's when I saw it. A small sticky note taped under the fruit bowl, scribbled in my mother's unmistakable cursive. We went out for the holiday. Grandpa doesn't like travel anyway. If Raylene shows up, she knows what to do. I didn't speak. My jaw locked. I read it again. Knows what to do? Like I was some sort of default setting. A backup caregiver no one even needed to notify. They left 2 days ago, Grandpa added gently. Said Arizona would be warm this time of year. I sat down across from him. Did anyone call? Text? Even ask if I was coming? He shook his head. No one mentioned you. I don't think they planned around you. That hit deeper than I wanted to admit. I stared at his plate. Leftovers. Cold. A man who had built that house, paid every bill, fixed every sink, left behind like expired milk. I tried to hold it together. I really did. So they took a trip, left you here. Figured I'd handle it, I muttered. They probably figured right, he said, voice like paper. I looked at him hard, and for a split second I wasn't angry at him. I was angry at me, for always showing up. I stood up and started clearing dishes without thinking. The air inside the house felt still, not peaceful, just forgotten. Grandpa tried to help, but I waved him off gently. Sit, I've got it. In the sink were bowls with dried oatmeal crusted along the sides, a coffee mug stained from days of use. I found an old cup of soup left behind the toaster, now thick and gelatinous. The pill organizer on the counter? Still full. Labeled for Monday. But today was Thursday. They said they'd take care of it, Grandpa offered quietly, almost like an apology. Said they'd come by to refill my meds. I think Carlene meant to. I didn't respond. I was staring at a stack of mail on the table. None of it opened. Some had yellowed slightly. One envelope was torn open but stuffed behind the couch cushion like someone had tried to hide it and gave up halfway. I pulled it out, bank logo, his name, and a bolded subject line. Unusual withdrawal pattern notice. I read it twice, then 3 times. Grandpa, do you know anything about this? He shook his head slowly. I don't use the ATM. Carlene said she set up some automatic stuff, said I didn't have to worry about bills anymore. My stomach clenched. I asked him for his login info. He scribbled it down on a napkin. When I signed in, the transaction list nearly knocked the breath out of me. Multiple Zelle transfers titled EM Projects, others labeled AZ Health Support and Coach Cleanse. Several $1,000s, not just once, recurring, one every few days. I clicked open a browser and typed Coach Cleanse AZ. First hit? A promotional article featuring Maritza, my sister, posing with essential oils and juice shots. My hands went numb. I switched over to Instagram. Her stories were all there, public. A spa visit, a branded giveaway, a video of her filming product shots in a luxury condo. She was doing promo reels, funded by Grandpa's pension. But the worst came last. One clip showed her at a boutique pop-up, holding a matcha latte and laughing with some influencer I didn't recognize. As she lifted her wrist to adjust her sunglasses, I saw it, clear as daylight. The watch I bought Grandpa last Christmas, same leather band, same custom screen I'd set up for him with bold numbers and big weather icons. She was wearing it like it had always been hers. My mouth went dry, my chest burned, not with sadness, not this time, with clarity. They didn't just take money, they took dignity too, and didn't think twice. I set the phone down, screen still glowing from Maritza's video, and exhaled slowly. I wasn't even sure what I was looking for anymore. Proof? Closure? Or just a reason not to keep pretending this family hadn't crossed the line a long time ago. The air in the house was stale. I walked into the hallway, trying to shake the heat crawling up my neck. Grandpa was asleep in his chair, a quilt barely covering his knees. I remembered he needed to log his blood pressure. I'd brought him a refillable logbook once. Where was it? I checked the hallway closet, then the kitchen drawers. Nothing. When I opened the cabinet in the sewing room, Grandma's old room, I found a dusty box tucked behind some thread spools. Inside was her phone, the cheap kind with big buttons and a cracked corner. I plugged it in. Took a while to come to life. Scrolling through her voicemail app, I didn't expect anything. Most were spam, a reminder for a dentist appointment dated 2 years ago. Then I saw it. Saved, 11 months ago. No contact name, just a timestamp. I tapped play. Carlene's voice spilled out, sharp and clipped. You don't need all these pills, Ellison. If you keep nagging, we'll just put you somewhere full-time. You think you're the only one who's tired? You are a burden. We don't have time for your dramatics. The room tilted. I paused the message, replayed it, just to be sure I hadn't imagined the venom in her tone. Grandpa appeared in the doorway, rubbing one eye. What are you doing in here? I turned to him, phone still in hand. Did she say that to you? About a nursing home? He leaned on the doorframe and nodded. She was having a bad day, I guess. No, I snapped. Bad days don't sound like threats. He didn't answer, just looked away. Later that night, while he was resting, I sat alone in the kitchen. A memory bubbled up. 2 years ago. Grandpa was recovering from knee surgery. I'd called to check on him, but no one picked up. Carlene texted back hours later. Busy with work, everything's fine. That same night, I saw Maritza's story. Her dancing on a beach in Cabo, cocktail in hand, captioned, "Blessed to escape the chaos." I remember staring at that post like it might change if I blinked long enough. I wanted to believe it was a mistake, a scheduling mix-up. But now? Grandpa walked in, slippers dragging. He looked tired in a way that felt permanent. They said I cost too much to keep around, he murmured, barely audible. I stood up. You don't cost me anything, but they will. The next morning, I brewed a cup of coffee I didn't even want and sat at the kitchen table, scrolling through my inbox on autopilot. That's when the unknown number popped up. Out-of-state area code. I almost declined it. Almost. Hi, this is Melissa from Wellsport Credit Union. Just calling to confirm the co-signed loan for $6,000 you approved in September. My grip on the mug tightened. What loan? There was a pause. The personal line tied to Delroy West. You're listed as the co-signer and mailing address recipient in Omaha. Every hair on my neck stood up. I never approved any loan. That's my address, but I didn't sign anything. Email me every document right now. 15 minutes later, the files came through. I opened the PDF. There it was. My name, my email, my signature. Except I never wrote it. The signature was close, but just off enough to make my stomach churn. Then I saw the IP address used to apply. It matched my old router at the Omaha condo, the one I stopped using months ago but hadn't deactivated. They hadn't just guessed, I'd been watched. I scrolled further. The applicant? Delroy West, my father? The attached email. lwest92 Lawrence, my brother, the same one who once borrowed my laptop, just for 5 minutes. My blood went cold. This wasn't a mix-up. It wasn't desperation. This was coordinated. I shut the laptop and walked into the living room where Grandpa was folding a blanket, hands shaking slightly. They used my name to fake a loan, I said, voice steady despite the tremble in my fingers. Lorne filed it. Dad's the primary borrower. He sat down slowly. Didn't ask how I knew. Didn't try to defend them. Instead, he looked at the floor and said, "They've done it before. Took what they thought no one would notice. But this time, they used you." I nodded. And they won't get away with it. I spent the afternoon compiling files, screenshots, statements, bank notices. Every line of data felt like another bruise I didn't know I had. Grandpa watched TV on low volume while I built folders with titles like evidence_01 and fraud_confirmed. But even with everything I'd found, there was still that voice in my head. What if it's not enough? What if it's just my word against theirs again? Then my phone buzzed. Tamira W. sent an audio file. I froze. I hadn't spoken to her since the last family barbecue, if you could call a day of side eyes and awkward silence a barbecue. I hesitated before pressing play. Lorne's voice filled the air, sharp and smug. She won't even check her credit. It's not a big deal. She always folds. Always. Tamira's voice, quieter, anxious. But what if she finds out? I don't want to lie. Lorne cut her off. You're my wife. You back me up. Don't go all moral now. A beat. Then he laughed. Raylene's too soft. She was born to be used. Honestly, it's her fault for always showing up. I didn't realize I was gripping the phone so hard until my fingers ached. I hit save. No hesitation. Then I opened my inbox. Subject: Financial abuse and digital fraud, family related. To Natalie Brockman, Elder Protection Attorney. I uploaded every document, attached the recording, typed until my fingers went numb. Every line was a brick. Every attachment, mortar. I wasn't building a case. I was building a wall they wouldn't climb over. Grandpa stepped in quietly behind me. He must have heard it, part of the recording still playing through the phone's speaker. His expression didn't shift much, but his shoulders dropped. So, it's starting, he said. I turned around. No, it's ending. Morning came quiet. Grandpa was already in the kitchen, flipping grilled cheese with the kind of focus that said he needed a win today. I joined him, poured coffee, and opened my laptop again. We ate at the counter while I renamed files, organized folders, and added timestamps. Feels like we're building a case, Grandpa said, cutting into his sandwich. I nodded. That's exactly what we're doing. After lunch, I took a break, just 5 minutes. I opened Instagram without thinking. Big mistake. Maritza's story loaded instantly. She was in a white robe, lounging on a balcony that clearly didn't belong to her. Champagne in one hand, my Apple Watch on the other. Caption: Finally escaping the drama, self-care only, #grateful_af. Underneath it was a video of her clinking glasses with some influencer I didn't recognize, both giggling like high schoolers. My stomach turned. Not because she stole the watch, but because she felt safe enough to brag about it. She knew exactly what she was doing. She always had. I didn't yell, didn't throw my phone. I just hit save. Again. I took a screenshot, another and another, highlighted the date, the account activity, the location tag. I logged into Grandpa's health portal and matched the timeline. While she was toasting her freedom, I'd been in the kitchen logging his meds. Enough. I opened my email again, attached a new folder of images, and sent it to Natalie with the subject line: Updated evidence, misuse of funds, digital impersonation, public misconduct. Then I logged into the Adult Protective Services site and started a formal report. It wasn't dramatic, it was documentation. Because people like Maritza didn't stop when you cried. They stopped when you filed. Done? Grandpa asked when he noticed me close the laptop. I looked up. Just getting started. The garage door clattered open just after sunset. Laughter filtered in first. Maritza's high-pitched squeal, Carlene's syrupy "finally home," followed by suitcase wheels bumping over the threshold. I didn't move from the kitchen table. My laptop glowed. The stack of papers sat to my left. Highlighted statements, photo printouts, voice transcript. "Didn't think to tidy up before we got home?" Carlene called out, dropping her purse on the couch like it hadn't cost Grandpa 2 weeks of pension. I waited until all 4 of them were in the kitchen. Then I clicked. The first image on the screen, Maritza's Instagram story, her in a spa robe, my Apple Watch on her wrist. Next, a spreadsheet of withdrawals from Grandpa's retirement account, lined up next to charges from a spa in Scottsdale and payments to an influencer named Jennafit. Lauren's voice crackled from my phone. "She's the only one dumb enough to say yes every time." I slid the printed report across the table. Carlene's jaw tightened. "This is disgusting. You're turning on your own mother?" Lauren slammed a hand against the chair. "You bugged my wife?" Maritza pulled out her phone and turned it toward herself. "Just so everyone knows, this is the kind of trauma I have to live with." She began filming. I stood and grabbed her wrist. "No, you don't get to film this." Delroy hovered near the hallway, silent. "This is going to blow up everything," he said flatly. "Good," I said. "Maybe it should." I looked at each of them, one by one. "You have 48 hours to fix this. Return what's mine. Return what you took from him, or everything goes public, legal, real consequences." Carlene opened her mouth. I held up a hand. "I'm not here to argue. I'm here to end it." Grandpa stepped in behind me, didn't say a word, just stood beside me. No one spoke after that. By sunrise, it was already in motion. I sat at the table, same seat as last night, sipping coffee that had gone cold. Grandpa stirred his tea beside me, quiet but alert. The front door stayed shut. No yelling, no bargaining, just the faint rumble of a UPS truck outside. I'd mailed the letters an hour earlier, each one certified, each one stamped by Natalie's office. No emotion, just names, dates, charges, elder abuse, fraud, identity theft. No more conversations, no more warnings. By noon, the ripple had reached them. Maritza's agency sent a formal notice. "Due to pending concerns regarding public image and financial misuse, we are suspending all affiliate campaigns." She locked her profile by 3 p.m. Lauren's bank accounts were frozen. Tamira must have acted fast. His texts came rapid fire. "Why are you doing this?" And, "We're still family, Ray." I didn't reply. He'd always confused family with immunity. "Carlene?" Word got to her women's circle fast. Someone forwarded me the message thread. "Until things are clarified, we're pausing your hosting duties." One woman simply wrote, "Disgusted." Grandpa watched it all unfold from the recliner, eyes following each ding of my phone. Late afternoon, I rented a moving van. We didn't take much. His chair, his medications, 2 boxes of photos and framed degrees. The house wasn't the problem. The people in it were. As we loaded the last lamp, he touched the doorframe, fingers brushing the worn wood. "You okay leaving it?" I asked. He didn't hesitate. "I'm not leaving anything worth keeping." I slid the house key into an envelope and placed it on the mantel. No note, no goodbye, just silence. He held one small suitcase. I took the rest. We stepped outside and didn't look back. The apartment wasn't much, but it was ours. No creaky family portraits on the wall. No tension waiting behind closed doors. Just the hum of the fridge and the smell of instant coffee warming the kitchen. Grandpa's room had a window that faced the park. Every morning he sat by it with his throne, a second-hand recliner we found at a church sale. He said it reminded him of a Buick seat, and that was somehow a compliment. I worked remote now, HR consulting, regular hours. No more driving across state lines to check in on a household that had never really seen me. We had routines, coffee by 8, Jeopardy reruns after dinner, grocery trips on Tuesdays. Our grocery list was handwritten on a magnet pad, right under the words, 2-person family, add as needed. They didn't disappear though, I still saw them. Maritza changed her Instagram name to M_life_reset, all lowercase, like humility could be staged. Carlene posted cryptic Bible verses about betrayal and spiritual warfare. Lorne? I found a thread on Reddit asking for advice on fighting elder fraud charges when family disputes get out of hand. No one replied. And yet, there were better echoes too. Tamira messaged me out of the blue. I passed my first licensing exam, getting certified next spring. Thank you for showing me it was okay to leave. I read it twice before I smiled. Not everyone stayed broken. At the store one afternoon, an older woman ahead of me in the checkout line glanced back. "You're the one," she said, "from the story about your grandfather. Good for you." I didn't correct her. I didn't explain. I just nodded. Later that night, I jotted one sentence in my journal. They took so much, but they didn't take me. From the kitchen, Grandpa called out, "Soup or grilled cheese?" I closed the book. Both. After everything we went through, every quiet moment loaded with tension, every time someone chose betrayal over honesty, I came away with a truth I wish I'd grasped much earlier. You don't owe anyone your silence, especially not when they mistake love for control. For too long, I stayed quiet. I let others define what family meant, even when that definition erased dignity and ignored harm. But when I chose to stand up for my grandfather, it wasn't just about defending him. It was about drawing a line. It was about finally saying, enough. In a family where guilt was a weapon and peace came at the cost of truth, I stopped playing by those rules. I chose to protect what mattered. Not tradition, but decency. Not keeping the peace, but keeping my self-respect. If you've ever been the one expected to absorb everything, emotions, expectations, chaos, just to hold everyone else together, you're not alone. If you've ever had to walk away from your own version of family to protect your spirit, I see you. Caring deeply doesn't make you weak, but letting go of what hurts you, that's strength. That's growth. And sometimes, the bravest thing you can do is stop letting people take from you, simply because they've always been allowed to. Now I want to hear from you. Have you ever felt the pressure to hold it all together for others, even when it broke you down inside? Or maybe you had to step away from people who were supposed to love you just to find your peace? Drop a 1 in the comments if this hit home, or share where you're watching from. And if this story moved something in you, if it brought something real to the surface, go ahead and subscribe. Because I'll keep telling stories like this, stories that remind us we're not alone. Sometimes the most powerful stories are the ones we finally decide to tell.